Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. I am presently on my way to somewhere for a holiday by the side of a pool. And as a result, I've scheduled this for this morning. I'm hoping I can do a hits and losses video at some point during the day. But in the meantime, you'll have to chew on this one. This is a military aid video, and this will be the first video for the 31st of July, 2025. We're going to start with the EU freezing some Ukraine funding unless anti-graft agencies' independence is restored, according to various media. Sources told European Pravda that if the controversial legislation curtailing the independence of anti-graft agencies is not rolled back, the EU would pause funding under the G7's ERA loan, a program covered by frozen Russian assets. Of course, that is a real challenge for the Ukrainians, but they are hoping to get some legislation. In fact, I think it's passing through the Verkhovna Rada today. There is talk about it. So hopefully that will be reversed in terms of the independence of the Ukrainian anti-corruption agencies, and that the loans to Ukraine can be put back on course. Okay, Germany this year amended its constitution to allow Berlin to borrow hundreds of billions of euros for military spending. We're going to return to this idea in a wee while, including weapons for Ukraine. So hopefully that will allow money to buy weapons for Ukraine. Norway can tap its extraordinary oil wealth to finance air defenses. Other European countries are talking about pooling cash. Now that Trump has agreed to allow US weapons to be sent to Ukraine, complex negotiations are underway over what types of hardware they can provide and with what money. Various ideas are being fleshed out, but to start, officials say they need to cover about $10 billion of weaponry. The first focus is on Patriot batteries and interceptor missiles, which Kyiv has been scouting for to counter Russian ballistic missile attacks on the capital and other cities. Germany has offered to fund 2 batteries and is leading talks with countries volunteering to drum up money for 1 more. Norway, a country that turned oil revenue into the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, has also offered to pay for a Patriot system. Norway has more than doubled its aid pledge to Ukraine to $7.8 billion for this year. So Norway's really stepping up. That's all from Max 25 there, taking it from the Washington Post. We're going to return to this idea of Germany tooling up a little later. Okay, Ukraine is to receive 11 more IRIS-T air defense systems. I think that's actually probably launchers. There's talk from Germany to Ukraine, the handle talking about how there is this discrepancy between systems and launchers, and it looks like they have started using the term system that refers essentially to 2 launchers. So anyway, either way, there are a bunch of these going to Ukraine. Each system currently produced for Ukraine includes, if that is to receive 11 more systems, then that is 33. Oh my goodness. Each system currently produced for Ukraine includes 3 medium-range SLM launchers and 2 short-range SLS launchers as part of a unified complex. My goodness, that's 5. That would be 55 elements being sent then. That's according to Ukrainian ambassador to Germany, Alexei Makiev. Wow. I'd love to see what Germany to Ukraine thinks about that as a number. Okay, interesting. And then we've also heard that, and I reported this the other morning, Hensoldt's TRML-4D, this radar system, is in fact capable of ballistic missile search and track, but the RST SLM launchers, the medium-range ones, lack the altitude range to have much of a defended footprint against ballistic threats. So if the ambassador is correct, so basically the ambassador said the other day, again it's the same ambassador to Germany, stated that the IRIS-T system, the SLM, the medium range one, had shot down ballistic missiles. It's not kind of designed to do so, it's not its forte, and I don't know what the percentage success rate would be for trying to shoot down ballistics, but it has been successful, which is fascinating, because then you could install some of these systems where they are more plentiful around high value sites that aren't afforded Patriot air defense coverage, in a hope that they could do a job. I'd imagine these were a few lucky interceptions, if the ambassador is correct, says Colby Badwa. And that is Germany to Ukraine. An interview with the European Pravda Ukrainian ambassador to Germany, Alexei Makiev, confirmed today that the Ukrainian Air Defense Forces have succeeded in intercepting ballistic missiles with the IRIS-T SLM in a few cases, although even though the Diehl Defense as a manufacturer has already stated that the RSC SLM is capable of intercepting short-range ballistic missiles, I do not recall that successful Ukrainian engagement was previously confirmed in an interview, nor have I seen any images of fire units on which such an intercept was marked. That's obviously a telling sign. So really good news that that is a capability for that system. Now, 3D printed German interceptor drones look suspiciously similar to Ukrainian ones, are shown here on this video. This American football looking little goblin can go 400 kilometers an hour. Someone has been collaborating. There is certainly a lot of, I guess, benefit for being in a capability coalition for drones, for different nations to assist Ukraine in their drone development and procurement, because then that allows the country in question to improve their capabilities going forward. And that bad boy moves at a rate of knots. Absolutely incredible. Although the context of that drone, it's been community noted actually. Video was taken from a hobbyist drone builder, Quadmover, who created his accounts there. So yeah, the Ukrainian one. Yeah, so I guess what they're saying here is this is a Ukrainian drone that we've already seen that looks remarkably similar to this German drone. I wonder if the German drone predated the Ukrainian one. That, and it could be that you know, you look around at what's been developed internationally or with partner countries. I mean, that moves at an absolute rate of knots, that German drone. That would be super useful for some of these faster flying drones as a drone interceptor. Of course, the problem for the Ukrainians is the Russians are now starting to use jet-propelled Shahed drones that can move at a rate of knots that's considerably more than even those really quick interceptors at sort of 700 kilometers an hour plus, and that's going to be a challenge going forward. So staying on Germany, the German company Diehl that we've already mentioned has tested its ground robotic complex in Ukraine for the first time as part of the Test in Ukraine platform. Why this is significant is because it isn't just about developing a drone, sending it to Ukraine, but as I reported recently, there's a Test in Ukraine project that is now up and running, where they are saying, the Ukrainians are saying to allied manufacturers, hey, if you want to test your stuff, come and test it in Ukraine. You'll get no better battlefield testing than an actual battlefield. So come and test this stuff in Ukraine, and we'll put it to good use, and then you can get the feedback, all the feedback you'll need. It's not going to be without risks, of course. This stuff can get blown up or captured or whatever, and then different nations can come and use Ukraine as a test bed. That is called the Test in Ukraine project, and here Diehl have their own UGV being tested there, so good stuff for them. Now, here is a barrel that's been produced in Slovakia. Slovak barrels, fascinating. Domestic ones, not there yet, so Caliber Obscura. This is reference to Slovakia making barrels for Ukraine, which, as I've discussed many times before, is an interesting one because Robert Fico has very publicly said, look, we're not going to help Ukraine sort of politically with military aid because, I mean, I'm sort of reading between the lines here, but the idea is that it's not morally correct to do so. Otherwise, we would do it, right? So he, from his point of view, being sort of pro-Russian, sort of somewhat Eurosceptic, somewhat anti-Ukrainian, he's going to say, it's not right that we provide military aid to Ukraine, but they can buy it off us. And as I often say, this is just a complete capitulation to money and how money trumps morality. Like, if you genuinely believe that it's the wrong thing to do to support Ukraine, you don't go, but I'll sell you this stuff. That's like, it's like everyone's got their price, right? But it's just offering up front. It's like, oh, it's wrong. It's wrong to I don't know. It's wrong to punch someone in the face for no reason, but if you pay me 20 quid, I'll do it. You're still bad, right? So if you think this is morally bad, selling it is not changing the morality there. You are just selling your morality down the river, which is quite incredible. Anyway, Slovakia produced 125 mil barrel for a Ukrainian T-80 tank, T-80 BV. No matter what Fico, Orban or Vucic claim loudly, so Slovakian, Hungarian and Serbian leaders claim loudly, the wonders of capitalism make many things possible. And Slovakia are still a very useful ally for Ukraine in terms of what they're producing, even though they are now only selling it to the Ukrainians. Of course, that's very similar to the US now. Non-EU countries, including Ukraine, can join Europe's new satellite network, rivaling Starlink, according to the EU Commissioner. Ukraine and other non-EU countries in Europe are welcome to begin negotiations to join the bloc's new IRIS-2 secure satellite communications program. A European Defence and Space Commissioner, Andrius Kubilius, told Euroactiv in an interview on the 28th of July. With Starlink being so prominent, I think is it 60% of all satellites are SpaceX owned? You know, Elon Musk as the James Bond villain, stroking his white cat, just going, yes, I own all the satellites. So Europe has to be able to compete with that if they don't want to be reliant on the United States. If the US becomes an unreliable partner in terms of Trump or people like Musk, then for Europe's own security, they need to be more independent. But that takes a hell of a lot of investment. I think it was OneWeb said recently they need 30 billion euros just to kind of start to compete type thing. So there's a lot of investment needed, but it looks like Europe is serious about that, and they're inviting in, one presumes, Ukraine and UK and Norway, I would assume, into their provision there. Now, the French MOD will acquire up to 1,000 Gobi-type loitering drones from the French startup Harmattan AI as a trial batch. So this is going back to that hobby drone that we're just looking at, and then to the Ukrainian drone that looks very similar to this one. The Gobi drone, developed by Harmattan AI, weighs 2 kilograms and can reach a speed of 250 kilometers an hour. It has an operational range of 5 kilometers, so it doesn't go very far. It goes fast enough to take out, one would assume, the Shag drones. Its key feature is it carries no warhead. Instead, it destroys its target by kinetic impact through collision, so it just smashes into the drones. This simplifies production and significantly reduces costs. And yeah, that's a really good adaptation. It's not ruled out that the Gobi may receive its first combat test in Ukraine as part of trials in real battlefield conditions. And this might be part of the test in Ukraine's project, where they say, right, we're going to test this. And Ukrainians say, yeah, you can come and test. Let's test, I don't know, you want a pretty good test. So you probably want to look at maybe 100 of those to begin with. See 100, then you can have a good percentage of work out how many succeed and so on and so forth. But yeah, good news there from the French. Now we're going to return to this idea of the Germans remilitarizing, right, and investing an awful lot in their own defense, as well as obviously in Ukraine's defense. Now, Germany's preparing for total militarization, says the source N-Strike. According to Bloomberg, the German government plans to submit over 60 military procurement projects to Parliament for approval by the end of the year. So, of course, they've changed their own constitution in terms of their debt, how they arrange national debt, and of course, then you've got the EU provision for 150 billion euros worth of, I think, preferential loans to member states, and I think that can raise to 800 billion. But essentially, Europe is tooling up, and they've been given the funds to be able to do that, or access to funds. And it's fascinating that Germany is at the forefront here, possibly using this as economic stimulus. But these include the purchase of 20 Eurofighter fighter jets, and that will maintain manufacturing in Germany. I don't know if that will affect British manufacturing at Walton and places that also make the Eurofighter, and it's Italy as well, helps to make those, or whether you can make the whole things in each separate country. I know that the new deal with Turkey has just brought back online, and we were just about to mothball our production line of Eurofighters, and that was all controversial, and they were looking forward to the new Tempest that is some way down the line and transferring manufacturing and design and blah blah blah. But that's basically because there were no orders for Eurofighters, and now that Turkey's come back or has come online with regard to buying Eurofighters, and 20 to Germany, that could be good for all of those countries, or particularly here it might just be Germany. Approximately 5,000 Boxer armored vehicles, so they are the chassis for the RCH 155, the new the new self-propelled gun that Ukraine is getting some of, but Germany's obviously going to be producing them for their own armed forces, and also the British are replacing the AS-90 with the RCH 155. I think it's going to be co-produced between Britain and Germany. And then you have at least 3,500 Patriot armed vehicles. Absolutely incredible. So there's an absolute ton of equipment here. In addition, the Defence Ministry is considering the acquisition of several hundred Leopard 2 main battle tanks. Wow. So we'll have to see how that goes. But they appear to be going all out for rearming. Incredible. And that shows you how worried I think they are about Russia, and how worried they are about European security, and possibly says something about their own economic status at the moment. Now, the US has approved a new $4 billion loan guarantee to help Poland buy American weapons, bringing total US defense loans to Poland to over $15 billion. So Poland has also, I'm including this here because Poland have been arming up to the point where they are now the biggest spender on defense in NATO as a percentage of GDP. So Poland have been going at it for several years now. Started under the last government, has been continued with Tusk's coalition, and they are buying lots from South Korea, and they're buying a lot from the US as well. And here the US is facilitating them buying even more. So Poland plans to spend 5% of its GDP on defense by 2026. So that was the agreement between the NATO states. But I'm wondering whether that 5% is on kit just alone, rather than 3.5% on kit and 1.5% on infrastructure. That was the agreement at the NATO summit. Poland are already on, what was it, 4-point-something%. They're absolutely flying. Anyway, Poland are arming up. So you've got Germany and Poland recognizing very obviously the threat that Russia are. I was reading somewhere today that they've arrested 32 people in Poland for spying, 32 Russians recently, for sabotage and spying and whatnot. So, I think they're very aware. I think the Germans are aware who the Russians are, and they are acting in accordance with those worries. Now, going to Ukrainian subjects here and indigenous manufacture and funding. Ukrainian drones, this is Stefanchuk, he's the speaker of the Verkhovna Rada. Ukrainian drones will soon be sold to the US, and the armed forces will receive new American weapons. That's interesting. I don't know if that's new as in weapons they don't have already, or just new, say, HIMARS. We're getting some new HIMARS, so I don't know. According to Rada speaker Stefanchuk, this autumn, Ukraine's defense industry is set to unveil new developments that will surprise the world. Wow. So in the autumn, Ukraine's military-industrial complex will amaze not only Ukrainians, but the whole world with its newly produced weapons. That is a mere couple of months away now. So, yeah, interesting. It says it will acquire the latest weapons. It said new, it depends how you translate it, the latest weapons from America. That does make it seem like it's a new type of weapon that they haven't already got, rather than HIMARS that they've already got, but it's a new HIMARS. No, the latest weapons, that changes the meaning, I think, a little bit there, maybe quite considerably. Right, Zelensky said there's an agreement with partners to finance the production of Ukrainian drones, and it's being financed at the moment. The amount is finalized at the moment. The amount is 400 million euros. So they are looking to close the gap between potential and actual. So they have this capacity gap where they can produce way more than they presently are. They just need the funds to do so, and they are seeking to close that gap. Now, from January to July, Ukraine's MOD has increased domestic procurement by 3.6 billion euros compared to the same period last year. As a result, Ukrainian-made weapons and equipment now account for 71.4% of all procurement by by the Defense Procurement Agency. Wow, really stepped up their production, the Ukrainians. Now, Bell Helicopters plans to invest in Ukraine's defense industry and launch helicopter production on Ukrainian soil, according to Economy Minister Sobolev. Technical consultations are ahead, but the project marks a potential new chapter in US-Ukraine defense cooperation. That is really significant, and actually they could do, I'm pretty sure, with some attack helicopters that can help out. Wow. So good news for the Ukrainians there. I don't know what the time frame would be on that, though. I mean, I can't imagine that's going to be anytime soon. But you never know with these news items whether when they announce them, whether it's already been happening, right? And they actually, Bell Helicopters, for example, may have started setting up a year ago. And now they're just finishing the manufacturing and say, yeah, we are now investing in Ukraine's defense to manufacture helicopters. And then the next week, they got the first helicopter out the pre-prepared site. I don't know if that's the case. It would be nice if it was, right? Now, Roy here, a useful source, says the Ukrainian Toro fragmentation FPV warhead is derived, as you can see in this video here, derived from what the Russians call the Black Sphere. So look at all those ball bearings. With explosive, it weighs 1.3 kilograms and contains approximately 1,100 steel shot fragmentation elements. That exploding is like one massive shotgun. And those pellets look bigger than shotgun pellets. I mean, that is, wow. Those ball bearings will fly. It looks a pretty nasty weapon, that. Or munition. Right, Ukraine's long-range converted E-300 Skyranger, so it's like a plane, is here seen carrying, and I had reported similar before, like this has been seen before. There's another picture of a Skyranger drone carrying a FAB-250 bomb underneath. I presume that's a drone and not an actual plane. You're never getting that plane flying around with the pilot in over targets. So this is exactly I say exactly kind of. It pretty much seems to me what Andrew Perpetua was talking about in a recent live stream when he was saying, why haven't the Ukrainians developed a drone to just carry a bomb and go and smash into Russian positions near the front line? And it's like, they have, and this is it. So they need to scale this up. I wonder, I'm sure Andrew's seen this. I'd love to get his opinion on that. In fact, let's just add him to that, Andrew Perpetua. Let's do this. This is what you were talking about. No? There you go. Okay. Marvellous. See what he says. Just a live me typing and having a chat with Andrew Perpetua. Zelensky has allowed military service under a contract for citizens aged 60 plus. A new law was signed to allow that. Now, that's not ideal. You don't really want people that age to go into military service. But actually, if those people can do jobs that younger, fitter people are doing behind the lines, whether it be driving a Gepard or, a mobile air defense unit, that's fine. 60 plus person just sitting and driving, or logistics drivers, or whatever it is. I think that's fine. If they're frontline soldiers, things are a little bit, it's a little bit different. But they need the people, right? Admission to military service under the contract for people 60 plus is possible only after approval by the General Staff. A probationary period of 2 months is established, during which the contract can be terminated in the case of non-compliance. The maximum age of service is not established. The contract term is 1 year with the possibility of extension. I don't know if that's like a forced thing or a voluntary thing. Probably a lot more detail needed for me there. But in a similar vein, the contract 18 to 24. So as far as I remember this was they were trying to get more people in, but they didn't want to mobilize. And at the moment, you can't mobilize people under the age of 25. They moved it from 27 to 25, but they're trying to, if you look at the demographics for Ukraine, the cohorts that are absolutely hammered are 18 to 24, right? Or 25. There's a real black hole with those age brackets. And the problem is, if you start mobilizing, so many people have called on the Ukrainians to do a mass full-on mobilization. They need to, they're just shooting themselves in the foot if they don't do a full mobilization. But actually, I understand why the Ukrainians aren't doing this, because A, they don't have the people in those age groups. So it goes like this, in those age groups, and then out again like that. So they're mobilizing all these people, but not that lot, because they don't exist there. They've got the lowest infancy rates in the world, Ukraine, and the highest mortality rates. So they need to replace the people they're losing, and you do that by immigration or having babies. So if they need babies, then they need predominantly these people, which is your main baby making age, to be having babies. And also you need to think about the economy going forward and after the war. So you need to tool up your young people with the skills to be useful for the economy, not just taking your 18-year-olds and throwing into the armed forces, and then they become institutionalized after 5 years of fighting, and then they've got no other skills. So they want these people to, A, not be killed because there's not enough of them, B, have babies, and C, be tooled up for work and add to the economy. And universities still keep functioning, and so on and so forth, higher and further education. Now, what 18 to 24 did, or contract 18 to 24, is said, look, rather than forcing you to be mobilized, we are going to voluntarily, or you can voluntarily sign up for the armed forces, but you'll still be able to go to university, you'll still get, special provision for learning and time for this and money for that and whatever. So it was a way of not forcibly mobilizing people, but attracting those people to voluntarily join if they wanted to in that age group. So the contract 18 to 24 is being expanded, 2 years of service for 1 million hryvnias for drone operators in the armed forces of Ukraine, border guards and National Guard. That's according to the Defense Minister. The term of service is 2 years, training up for up to 4.5 months. So the other thing they get is much more training. You get decent training. You're volunteers. You're not in the mobilization category. So if you want to join up, we'll give you good pay, really good training, and mortgage at 0% after service. Those who served under the contract will receive a deferment of 12 months after 25 years. Anyway, they're expanding that. So it's obviously, it's either worked really well and they're going to continue it, or it hasn't worked enough yet and they need to continue it to get more in. So whatever, they need people, right? The Ukrainians need boots on the ground. Right, we're going to move to the Russian side of things. Now, as I've said previously, the first fully built Chinese decoy drone has been found in Ukraine. It's the first time a fully Chinese drone has been found in Ukraine, made up of parts entirely from Russia's ally. I guess China can get away with this by saying it's not a lethal weapon. It doesn't have explosives on, it's fully a decoy drone. But I don't think that really helps. You can see all the components there, or not all of them, but some of the components there and where they come from. That is, I think we're increasingly seeing more and more Chinese equipment in Ukraine, dual use stuff. They have been importing stuff labeled as cooling equipment, and they've been like drone motors and whatnot. And so there's definitely underhand importing going on into China, and then China gets that to Ukraine in probably equally dodgy ways. Now, Hungarian company has been exposed as helping Russian arms industry evade sanctions. Inform Napalm, which is a kind of cyber group, and the militant intelligence group have obtained documents showing that how Milspace KFT, based in Hungary, assists Russian defense firms in circumventing international sanctions. Key findings are that Milspace KFT serves as the formal contractor. Repairs are carried out in Kazakhstan at a plant licensed by Russia's Military Design Bureau, and spare parts are supplied from Moscow through Me Inter Limited. This scheme allows sanctioned Russian military producers to remain operational, directly undermining EU sanctions and NATO security. Officials across the EU and NATO should investigate and shut down this channel of evasion. Full documents are now available. Wow. So, this will be happening probably right across all the allied states that are helping Ukraine. Sadly enough, profit comes before morality for these people, but I guess it's more likely to happen within countries that are much more susceptible to Russian influence and cozy up to the Kremlin. Now, here we hear about further kind of invasion issues. If you remember, I showed you a video the other day of the expansion, well, not necessarily the expansion, but just of the interior of the Yelabuga drone manufacturing facility in Tatarstan, 1,300 kilometers or so from the Ukrainian border. That is where they're producing an absolute ton of these Shahed drones. or Garan 2 drones. And that has also seen a massive expansion. There are now supposedly 104 dormitories there and has a huge capacity. But in that video, the initial video, we saw how they were launching some of these Garan drones by whacking them on the top of these trucks and then driving down this road, purpose-built road, and then they fly off the top of the truck. Now, those trucks were Dodge Rams, or despite US sanctions, at least 130 Ram 1500 pickup trucks were imported into Russia after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 8 of them via a US company. And this tracks with your typical Dodge douche, said someone. I don't know enough about American cars to be able to throw that slur around, but certainly these Ram cars are, or SUVs are finding their way to Russia, and that is not cool. These loops need to be shut down. Now, a Chinese Type 63, this is like a multiple launch rocket mini kind of trailer thing, has been seen in service with the Russian army. Doesn't necessarily mean it came from China, but it's come from somewhere. What's it doing on Ukrainian, on Russian, well, one would presume on Ukrainian territory, actually, unless it's up in Kursk. Yeah, that's a worry. Then we had these what they call July Storm, or I think it's, oh yeah, July Storm drills, where the Russian fleet was doing, the Baltic fleet was doing drills, and they showed footage of this. And this is a supposedly a Russian drone, USV, unmanned sea vehicle, absolutely like shellacking there into the pontoon. Sorry, I had my headphones turned down. I hope there's not been any other noises that have drowned me out during the course of this video. That would be really annoying, wouldn't it? Anyway, that is a huge old explosion on that barge thing, showing off their capabilities in terms of unmanned surface vehicles. And of course, if they can throw those into, say, the port of Odessa, that is a concern. You can see it, see more examples of what they are claiming they can do, and stuff coming from the July Storm drills. Here, more footage from the Russian Northern Fleet drills claiming to show uncrewed surface boats used against surface targets, counter USV tactics, FPV drones intercepting fast-moving threats. They're showing all sorts, including that explosion that we just seen. And yeah, brilliant. Anyway, it could be a worry for the Ukrainians going forward. Right, Russian artillerymen complain about the completely low quality of Russian-made shells. And also about being transferred to infantry due to bad shooting, which occurs precisely because of poor quality shells. This is not the first time we heard of this. These are Russian-made shells, but we have heard the Russians complain about the North Korean shells that they have received being really poor quality. But here they are complaining about the Russian ones. About ammunition, the information was checked through an active artillery officer who's been through more than one war and is currently at the front. They write to us, "Good health, comrade, blah, 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 blah. I'm a combat artilleryman, etc., etc." Okay, when we've just trying to find, yeah, when we first arrived at the war, we were, or SVO, we were working with Soviet BC, the very one that had a GOST, which was certified and fired before being delivered to the troops. It was old, rusty in places, but it was possible to work. The work was going great. Then Iranian and Korean BC appeared. There are no complaints about Iran, ideal sets of shots. They fly where they should. With Korea, it was worse. Carpet bombing over areas. Somehow we zeroed them in with the entire front, but we try not to use them for pinpoint work. There is little trust there. So those are the Korean ones. And then came the moment when they started importing Russian BC, a modern one. To say that it's an effing mess is to say nothing. You make a shot from one batch, make adjustments, and the second one from the same batch gets a 1 to 2 kilometer overshoot. There are no checklists with individual adjustments for each shot set, which means there is no quality control of the manufactured products. It even happens with that the charges, the casings, come without primers, what kind of quality control are we even talking about? To the ensuing problem, who are the poorly shooting artillerymen for the infantry? To all the explanations about the zero quality of the ammunition. Well, anyway, it goes on and on to talk about how, you know, they get into trouble and put elsewhere for shooting poorly, but it's not them. Essentially, it's the munitions that they are using. Good news for the Ukrainians, though. And then we're going to end with this. So Donald Trump has just announced this, and I don't quite know what to make of this. So from an economic point of view, from an American economic point of view, you know, this is trade wars and inflationary and et cetera, et cetera. But from a Ukrainian point of view, interesting. So this Donald Trump just said on Truth Social, because of course that's where you announce all of your policy details. Remember, while India is our friend, we have over the years done relatively little business with them because their tariffs are far too high, among the highest in the world, and they have the most strenuous and obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers of any country. Also, they have always bought a vast majority of their military equipment from Russia and are Russia's largest buyer of energy, along with China, at a time when everyone wants Russia to stop the killing in Ukraine. All things not good. India will therefore be paying a tariff of 25% plus a penalty for the above starting on August the 1st. Thank you for your attention to this matter. MAGA. Plus a penalty for the above sounds like, and they will also be paying a penalty for buying energy from Russia and buying military equipment from Russia. Now, we've already seen India turn away from Russian military equipment. So that's already happening. They are favouring either making their own, buying from China or buying from elsewhere, right? But this is good news. This is Trump getting heavy on India in terms of secondary sanctions and secondary tariffs. And that's good news. I want to see that last part. It's the bit plus a penalty for the above that is particularly exciting now. I'm not so bothered about the 25% tariff because I think that's economically problematic for the Americans. Actually, maybe I don't know about the details with India too much though. But if you're going to hammer them for buying energy and weapons off Russia, that's a good thing. So positive to end on. Well done, Trump, there in that. Arguably, devil will be in the detail. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate your support. It's going to be a funny couple of weeks as I'm away. I will endeavour to get as much to you as I possibly can, whilst also sitting by the pool and drinking beer. So we'll see how that goes. Take care. Speak soon.